So Rhoda back going, go on, take a drink of that.
Why did you have a drink of water?
What's wrong with that water? In a different bottle. So then there was pictures of Stephen O'Neill going around with, in fairness, there were 2 different bottles.
Yeah, with
so it's
Stephen O'Brien as well.
Mickey Hart here, you're listening to GA Hour Football Show.
The GA Hour with Colin Parkinson is brought to you by Paddy Power, home of the Money Back Special.
I'm not finished yet, it took me a long time to get here.
So Cara O'Kane, my buddy, broke the news that Gough is the referee for the All-Ireland final. So the Irish News had this one, and in fairness, I think this is nonsense. Conan, I saw some tweets from you yesterday. You have a different opinion of it.
Would we like us with it?
Connor, you will have the casting vote on this.
Fair enough.
Maybe I'll let you make the case for Conan, and then I'll just tear that to shreds if I can.
Yeah, well, I think the case for Gough is that I think he's been the best referee this year, so I think that's the only real case for him.
Do you know he has been the best? Like, he wasn't great up in for Donegal Mayo. There was a lot of complaints that night, was there not? Did he do that game?
Penalty, Michael Murphy penalty, a couple other.
I thought that was a penalty. Like, yeah, I thought that you got the black card call right.
We did think that was a penalty.
Brave calls as well. Like, yeah.
Anyways, but to be honest, so when you say he's been the best referee, I always think back. I can't think back of who ref what games to know who's been the best referee. Like, that's just you're just throwing that out.
No,
there.
I can't think back. I remember well, but
yeah, it's hard enough to think who the best players were. Never mind who the best referees were.
But my issue is more just the case against him. I don't think it's really fair. Like, to say that someone lives and works in Dublin. Like, I live and work in Dublin. You used to play in Dublin, and you work in Dublin. I don't think either of us have any greater affinity with Dublin.
I saw your tweet with that gesture. I'm going to have to pull you up.
Pull me up, but then let me go on.
Because living and working in Dublin, you can't just throw a blanket over all of that. You work in the media. You don't work as a teacher. You're not immersed in any where do you live?
I play club football.
No, you play club football, but do you live in Skerries? Are you immersed in that community?
I live in. Of course I am. My girlfriend plays in Skerries. I live in Skerries. I'm up there kicking around when we're not training.
Yeah, do you drink
Brian Cullen, who's a conditioning coach?
Do you drink down in the local?
Yeah, not every night. I drink.
I do think that the teaching profession, in particular, immerses you in the community, in that you're meeting parents, you're meeting the young children coming in with Dublin jerseys. I think a lot of the schools are at the club, or the school he taught out in Terranure is a feeder school for St. Jude's. Do you know what I mean? I do think the teaching profession brings you to another level of interaction with the community. You don't meet the community on a daily basis in your job. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I meet them in my personal life, I suppose, and I'm meeting players who are playing underage with Dublin. People who are on the outskirts of the Dublin panel, I'm friendly with that. I'd like to call them friends if they'd have me. And like people who are involved in the coaching staff as well. Do you
think if you were refereeing, now I'm not talking about you're thinking about whether you want Dublin to win or not, that's irrelevant. Do you think if you were reffing a huge, massive game in Croke Park with Dublin going for 5 in a row, as you being playing with Skerries and living in the Skerries community, that in some way you might double guess yourself at a decision based on having to meet people in Skerries?
Yeah, and this is the other thing. Like, I think,
but that's the argument. No, you're immediately compromised.
No, I think Dublin's actually different to that as well. Like, Dublin is massive. Like, most people in Skerries don't play GA. Like, there's 12,500 people in Skerries, and Skerries is more of an outlier. Like, David Gough lives in the city centre, where I'd say he'd go through weeks and months without even meeting somebody in the GA community. Like, that's how big Dublin is, and it's so international. It's not like living in Tullamore. And I could probably see that argument a bit more, where you are worried about going down to the shop because everybody there has vested interest in it.
But he works in Cumann and Munskull, so he's meeting people in Dublin all the time. Do you know what I mean? He works I think he's a teacher out in Drumcondra now, St. Pat's, is it? Or he's connected with DCU or something.
DCU,
My point, but he's chairman of the Cumann and Munskull. Like, I mean, this is not why the reason we're having this conversation, or even a debate. Why pick a referee that this debate is concerned around? Why not just pick a referee which is none of this baggage? And let's be honest, David Gough's under unbelievable pressure for this game, and he could go against Dublin to try and prove that he's not pro-Dublin. Like, do you not think that there's a much less messy way of doing this?
David Gough never get an All-Ireland final then, because Dublin are going to be in.
Well, I think, but that's hard luck, I reckon. I reckon that's just unlucky for you. Unlucky.
I think there's going to be a lot more refs that are living and working in Dublin as the years go on, and Dublin are going to be in a lot of All-Ireland finals, and I think it's very harsh to rule out all those refs based on the fact that they're living and working in Dublin.
Yeah, I see, but I think the profession is important. Like, I do think what the profession is definitely. I think living and working in Dublin, I live I lived and worked in Dublin, lived in the financial services, or worked in financial services. There was people from every county in there. And then I went back home and I lived with people from Laois and Galway and Mayo and different places. And I went out in the city centre, and that's different to, I think, a teacher meeting parents, children, and things like that. Do you see that there's a difference in those two things?
What does David Coldrick? What does David Coldrick do? Because he lives and works in Dublin. Because I just thought that the residency argument that was put forward by Eamon Fitzmaurice and others was a little bit undermined, because there was no hullabaloo when David Coldrick left the 2015 final, which was the year before David Goff. I got the impression from Eamon Fitzmaurice that his argument was based more on their experience in the 2016 semi-final.
Well, that has a big part of it. That has a big part of it, because he got two huge calls wrong in that game, and they both concerned Kevin McManaman, who is St Jude's, who his school Terranure is a feeder school for St Jude's, and we know Kevin McManaman is a man of very high integrity and a really good fella, you know. So when you might know Kevin McManaman and he turns around and appeals to something for you, you might be, in a split second when the hill roars, you might actually think, Jesus, Kevin McManaman appealed for a 45 that wasn't a 45. The umpire waved wide. David Goff overruled his umpire to believe Kevin McManaman. That's a huge call, lads. He didn't overrule his umpire and get it right. He overruled his umpire and got it wrong because Kevin McManaman told him. And then the second one, the hit on Crowley, involved Kevin McManaman as well, and he admitted he got that one wrong at a huge part of the game. Come on, lads. It's only human nature.
I think that's fair enough, but I think the argument that Fitzmaurice is using is the residency argument, whereas he's not. If he's saying that the reason
he thinks the residency argument is connected to those big decisions.
It seemed to me that the way he wasn't saying that, I don't want David Goff reffing this final because he reffed Kerry against Dublin in 2016, he made some very questionable decisions. If he's going to say that, fair enough, because I know in Mayo, for example, when Cormac Riley didn't referee a Mayo game for years, and then there was such hullabaloo when he came back and he reffed the league game against Donegal and Castlebar. I remember we were talking about it on here. He gave a penalty after a minute, and you know that was purely based on him doing a bad performance in previous games involving these teams, where the argument that I've seen for the most part is purely based on the fact that David Goff is living and working in Dublin, and that's going to affect his performance.
I think that's all connected, and I do think being chairman of the Cumann and Munskell, because someone was telling me yesterday, Cumann and Munskell is a subcommittee of the county board and has representation at county board meetings. He's too connected, lads. And I'm not calling his integrity into question here at all, and I do think he's a good referee, but this is just too messy for him. It's too messy. There's too much of a hullabaloo about it. Just pick someone who has none of this.
Yeah, but I don't think the hullabaloo's fair, and it's his livelihood. I don't think he could do anything about that. I blame Fitzmaurice and everybody else who sort of kicked it up, and nobody's talking about James Owens living in Kilkenny, doing the Kilkenny Tipperary game this weekend. You know, we're getting a second final in a row.
Well, there was a lot of talk about the Kilkenny referee that did the Wexford Tipperary game, in that one of Wexford or Tipperary had to play Kilkenny in the final, and he was under a lot of pressure, not because he was going to favour one team, but because there was a massive spotlight on him, and I can see that too.
But that's what's so strange about this. Like, would Dublin fans not be a bit more paranoid that a Meath referee is in charge of, their 5 in a row game? Like, their biggest rivals?
Not based on his performance in 2016. Absolutely not. Like, whether that comes back to haunt them, and now he's under so much pressure that he might not give them a call because, you know, subconsciously he knows this is going on in the background. It's too messy for both teams and for David as well. Like, I genuinely do think it is.
I'm just thinking, if Derry were playing Dublin, say, in a final, and I had a choice between David Goff, who's living in Dublin, or a Tyrone referee, Sean Hurst, and I know they're not biased either, that's the other thing, we're just assuming that they would be, but I would rather a referee who's living in Dublin as his career rather than somebody from a direct rival county.
Yeah. I would agree. I would even go so far as to say that a Leinster referee should not... This should be a Connacht referee or an Ulster referee and get any of this stuff, because people cling on to anything. Never mind a referee from a neighbouring county, so you can straight away say he hates us. Now he lives and works and as a teacher and is kind of immersed in Dublin, and he's favoured Dublin massively in the last big game. He hasn't refereed Kerry in Dublin since, and he's favoured Dublin in a huge game with 2 calls that were outrageously wrong. So, like lads, there's two. That's why I'm saying it's nothing against David Goff, or it's nothing against his refereeing, which is solid. Sometimes he annoys me about blowing for frees off the ball. But Maurice Deegan was at the last day too. Like, I mean, if they want to clean up defending, if that's David Goff's little thing, well, then defenders need to shape up and get their hands off the ball, and everybody knows that. So I'm softening on him on that. Because, like, I mean, I played in the forwards and that's fine, although I played in the back as well. So I've no problem with that. I've no problem with his refereeing. He did get the Murphy call exactly right. It was a penalty. So it's not that. It's just this. It's too messy.
Well, I'm surprised he's got it now. After the hullabaloo that there's been this week, I thought that the GA might fold and not give it to him because they don't want to put undue pressure on him. But I would have also hated if the reason that he didn't get the final was because Fitzmaurice is talking about it, Mike Quirk is talking about it, Aidan O'Mahony is talking about it, just as Kerry, the influential Kerry pundits in the media have a habit of doing in the past.
See, I don't think this is orchestrated. To be honest with you, we didn't even cover Goff. Covering the All-Ireland referee on a review show on a Monday from the semi-finals isn't my idea of what a Monday show should be about anyway. So I don't think this was necessarily orchestrated. I think Fitzmaurice just brought it up,
fair enough.
And maybe Quirk asked him a couple of questions about it. So that wasn't... and then you had Aidan O'Mahony who was talking on Paddy Power about it as well. So I don't know. Like, I mean, people are trying to make out that it's an orchestrated campaign. I'm not sure when it didn't work anyways. Because, like, I mean, John Horan, the True Blue John. Although, listen, guys, I honestly think that it could work against Dublin because I feel bad for Goff. I think he's in an impossible situation in this final. Now, he's a good referee. He just needs to trust his instincts. But when that hill roars and he's not sure, what does he do? Because there's decisions where you can't be 100% sure. And there's players there trying to trick you. And there's lads diving. And there's all this sort of stuff. And the stadium is roaring at every little call. That's not easy. It's just not easy for him.
I'd say he genuinely probably would need to see a sports psychologist now over the next couple of weeks because, like, you know, he will be second guessing.
You might need to see one afterwards.
If I make this decision, what will people say after?
Just a psychologist in general, not a sports one. So look, that's it. So best of luck to David Goff anyways, because he's been in with you, Conan, and you liked him in here, and like I've never met him. I've criticised him a couple of times, but like, I mean, I hope I hope he has a good game, and I hope there's nothing to talk about outside of this. To be honest, you'd imagine Dublin are going to win this. It's Dublin. It's been Dublin have beaten the handicap in every game. So we'll preview this when the time is right. But it might not come down to that 1 point game where, you know, he's the villain in the whole thing, and you'd hope that's the case. Right, Jack O'Connor has got the Kildare job. So this was broken last night. So he won All-Irelands with Kerry in 2004 and 2006. He took over from Paddy O'Shea and brought that kind of hard edge, brought in Aidan O'Mahony, brought in Paul Galvin, turned Kerry into this meaner team when they were a bit soft after that Tyrone game in 2003. Well, perception was that they were a bit soft. Then he came back in 2009 and won an All-Ireland again. That was after beaten by Tyrone in 2008. He won minor titles in 14 and 15. He's been with the under-20s last 4 years and hasn't won an All-Ireland. So obviously the under-20s is a bit of a cod. Well, the last 2 years anyway, since this new rule has come in. So, like, I mean, I think he's a great appointment for Kildare. I think he brings that little bit of star quality and All-Ireland winning experience and all those things that a county like Kildare need. He's from Kerry, and they did pretty well with Micko, who was from Kerry. I don't know, like, the only thing you would worry about is that the game has changed a lot since 2009. A lot. You know, so like, I mean, how he can adapt to how the game is pretty much basketball with 15 players now. Yeah, everyone's moving up and back the field together. So he needs to, well, bar the two in the full forward line, which invariably will have to get back when their man takes off to create the extra man. So he needs a crash course in how this game. Listen, mate, I'm sure he's well up on top of the modern game.
But that happens in basketball as well. As soon as you win the ball, it's like, is there a fast break on? Can you chuck it long? And then as soon as that's not on, then you start
slowly working up the field. It is, boys. That's the principles Gaelic football is following, unless there's a rule made where certain players need to stay in their own half. We're not going to get into the rule changes. We went to town on them last year.
I'm just trying to think that the game changed much between when he first came in 2004 when he came back in 2009, but I think it's changed way more dramatically in the time
I think 04, 06 and 09, not that much.
Yeah, but he's been like crucially, like, he's been involved in the game. He's been involved in the modern game since then, and just apart from the under-20s, which I think is undermined by use as a bit of a cod, and the fact that he doesn't have two generational players available to him him in Sean O'Shea and David Clifford.
Yeah.
But success seems to follow him everywhere he goes. And I just think, as you said, a bit of star quality. And like this year, Cian O'Neill wasn't helped by the fact that players were maybe non-committal and going away and stuff like that. I don't think you'll hear any of that next year. I think everyone will be back on board for the first year of this reign. And like I'd say, you're probably not talking about Toplin, Dublin and Leinster obviously, but Super 8s, I think Kildare are definitely in a great chance next year.
I think they're a certainty for Super 8s. I think Kildare are knocking on the door of the top teams. I really do. I've said that on the show here for the last 2 years. I think they've got very, very good players right throughout their team. There is talk John Sugrew's going in as number 2. Now, Sugru was in the Kerry management team, but was under Pat O'Shea, not under Jack O'Connor. I had to find that out because I knew Sugru was in there, and I was like, Jesus, how have I not put this 2 and 2 together here?
Physio, though, as opposed to...
He was physio with Pat O'Shea. Yeah, I think he did some of the physical training maybe with them down there. He moved on a little bit from physio. But... yeah, it would make sense if Sugru, I don't know if Sugru has gone from being number 1 at Laois. Kildare's obviously a promotion, much as it kills me to say that. It's a step up from Laois, but being a number 2 from a number 1 is a step down. So I don't know whether this is just a speculation at this stage. But he might not be a bad call from Jack O'Connor. He's free, he lives near Kildare, he's ticking a lot of boxes. He has a business in Portlaoise though, so whether he might want his business to suffer by jumping ship from Laois to Kildare, I don't know, John. Think about this.
Does that mean he's
these
biased
people on a daily basis?
Yeah, he's living and working in Laois.
So yeah, he's compromised. There you go. Listen, that's it. We'll move on to Tyrone here, lads, because there's loads of stuff going on in Tyrone. Sean Kavanagh on Mickey Hart. So whether Mickey Hart stays, he has another year on his contract. He signed an extension of 2 years. Sean Kavanagh thinks there's a time when the baton has to be passed on. He's given his life to Tyrone football, but there are other guys there, the likes of Fergal Lohan, Peter Canavan, Brian Dewar, big names in Tyrone football. And the core of that team today won an under-21 title with those guys. Maybe it's time for someone like that in. No one can fault Mickey Hart, but time moves on. So I don't know what you think of this, lads, whether Mickey Hart has taken... I think he'll get his last year. I'm more on the line that maybe he should step aside then. I do take the point with Canavan and Logan and Dewar, and these lads did bring a lot of these McShanes, Frank Burns, Connor Milers. Who else was on that under 20 team? The cornerback Rory Brennan, all those anyways. Talk one of these so I can think of a few more. But anyways, I don't know. He'll see out his extra year, and you'd imagine he might step down then.
Yeah, so O'Mulligan was right in saying he deserves to see out his extra year. Like if anybody's earned to see it out to his way, it's probably
there's a bit of an Arsene Wenger about him now, though, is there?
Like, I actually find it very hard to criticise him. Like I know, like we've talked about their tactics before, and maybe there's games that they left behind that they could have won, but like the last 5 years, Kerry, Mayo, Dublin have put them out. Kerry again this year. Semi-final, quarter-final against Mayo, semi-final, final and semi-final.
But when are they going to make that step up?
But are they good enough to make that step? I think they will be at some stage. I just don't know if that's failing though. Like Peter Canavan could come in and get the semi-final, lose to Kerry, and is that a bad year? I don't think Tyrone are at that level yet where it's a disgrace if they don't beat Kerry.
I think it's perfectly legitimate to ask the question. Do you know, like I don't think Sean Kavanagh said, I don't know, did he say he should step down immediately? I think he was asked a question maybe about whether, he's brought them as far as he could, and I think Sean Kavanagh was answering to that question as opposed to whether he should step down. I mean, like you've mentioned their big record. I mean, like their record in the big games. I don't think they've beaten Dublin, Mayo or Kerry since 2008.
Yeah.
That's a fairly damning slight against maybe Hearts side of play. You're saying that Peter Canavan might come in and he might only get to the same level, but he might not. He might, like we've talked constantly here about the need for Tyrone to evolve, and they have to a certain extent. But I get the impression after the Donegal game this year that Mickey Hart was only too happy to revert to type and go back to what they'd been doing for ages, rather than stick the course with the new way of playing with McShane Donnelly inside and playing a more direct style of football.
Now they went back to that against Kerry. In fairness, they played a more direct game, and they played Donnelly and McShane. So I didn't see Tyrone being unbelievably defensive against Kerry, that kind of way, and they still lost. So they seem to be trying to be exhausting different avenues. Maybe they just aren't good enough, and we slightly overrate Tyrone every year.
Yeah, I don't even know if they aren't good enough. Like that's probably where Connor's point is fair, Because I look at it and think, well, Matty Donnelly's 28 and McShane's 24, I think. So you're thinking, right, next couple of years, that really needs to be the focal
Donnelly's
point.
only 28. I thought he was a bit older.
So that's where you can really win in All Ireland, I think, with those two. If you get them ticking and get everything around them obviously working well. So maybe there's an argument there that somebody needs to come in and take those reins. But as I said, I just don't think getting to semi-final, losing to Kerry, or getting to final last year, losing to Dublin, can be seen as a failure.
Yeah,
I don't think
I agree.
Tyrone are at that level.
No, I agree. Like, I mean, I suppose they've gone semi-final, final, semi-final.
Yeah.
You know, now in those years they've been knocked out unimpressively in Ulster.
Yeah.
Do you know that? You know what I mean? So
Well, 2017 you won the Ulster, I think.
they won Ulster in 17, but they were hammered by Donegal twice in Ulster. So, like, I mean, you look at it this year. If you were to look at this year, they got hammered by Donegal and they collapsed against Kerry. Now, that's not... nobody's going to convince me that this year has been a good year for Tyrone, because it hasn't. Do you know? Like, I mean, when you're a top 4 team, you should be in the semi-final, because there's a big drop.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? From the top 4. So whether it's a success for Tyrone to get to a semi, I'm not so sure. So yeah, Muggsy was back at Sean Kavanagh. I've never criticised Sean Kavanagh for having a strong opinion on something. He's entitled to, and if he thinks that, he thinks that. And Muggsy said Sean always has lots of notes in front of him during these broadcasts, but he must have lost the page where Hart on what Hart has brought to Tyrone. And of course he has a point, but I think that goes without saying. You know, Kavanagh is still amazing servant. Like, I mean, I don't think that's necessarily fair from Muggsy. Not much wrong with what Sean Kavanagh said. Sean Kavanagh's rattling cages. I've no problem with that. He's given a strong opinion, which isn't always the unpopular, or isn't always the popular opinion,
absolutely.
and I don't think he should be criticised for that. But I did laugh at Muggsy talking about the notes. Have you noticed that this year? Have you noticed that they're all ruffling through notes now? Right? So this is a Declan McBennett thing, as far as I've heard, that now they have to be stronger under analysis. So the maybe one before I turned it off was when Brolly was talking about Gough, and here he is going through notes. Like, there can't be anything written on these notes. Like, I mean, there's just not. What would be? I'd love to get my hands on his notes, right? So whether he's got stats on them or what, because Brolly just talks off the top of his head and guff and nonsense and talks about himself.
Yeah. I was surprised that when Brolly threw out another like 30% kick out stat or something. I was like, oh Jesus, Brolly.
But have you noticed
he
though?
always gets one and loves to hold on to it and throw it out at the right time.
Yeah, just get one stat and repeat.
Yeah,
but
they're
they're all run here. Look, just to make it sound Sunday game, I'm just going to rattle these couple of pages.
Normally he just makes up an anecdote about somebody in a bar. I was talking to Francis in the pub. Like, he doesn't need the stats.
Yeah. Okay, so and just on that, Colin Kavanagh looks like he might be retiring. So he says, I'll be 33 this time next year, and it's a young man's game. I'm getting older. My second baby is due this week as well. It'll probably be one of those things I'll sit down and have a think about. I'll not make any rash decisions. Maybe have a chat with Mickey at some stage. I don't know. I've been toying with the idea for the last 1 or 2 years. So if he's been toying with it, they didn't make any progress this year. He had the daughter out in the field with him, which is a telltale last picture. It's the last stand with the daughter, although Andy Moran has done it. And like, this actually shouldn't be a telltale sign with Andy Moran. Like, I mean, he's just completely thrown that out the window. But I have a feeling Kavanagh will go.
Yeah, such a nice photo as well. It does show that there's more to life as much as
it was captioned as well. We've had a good run, Daddy, or something.
He
like
did that.
Yeah. So
he's gone.
When you're toying with it for a couple of years, and I was just thinking as well that Sean might be in his ear. Like, reading Sean's book, I think he constantly talks a lot about being a bit selfish and demanding, not spending enough time with his kids in his last couple of years at Tyrone. And then when he was finished, that it was such he didn't know himself that he had so much time to spend with them. So especially with a second kid coming, I'd say, and especially having talked about it like that with that photo on the pitch, I doubt he's coming back.
Yeah, it's a funny one with Colin, because he's actually, if anything, he's getting better with age. He's coming off 2 All-Stars. He won't get one this year. So like, he's kind of tying with, geez, I wish I was playing like this when I was 25 and I didn't, I mean, he's just getting better as the years go on, which is a strange one. And that's what's obviously going to make the decision harder. And playing, there's nothing wrong with how I'm playing. It's just maybe family commitments or whatever.
He's not slowing up either. Like, it's not like it's obvious that he's 33, know, and like the questions this year were, can he continue playing in that position? So he tried to expand it a bit more again, and he went back in the midfield. He attacked kickouts. He tried to bring that sort of stride that he has back into it, and he had it. So yeah, it'll be a big miss for Tyrone.
Yeah, Niall Morgan as well. Geez, you'd think this is a Tyrone show. He's been talking about, so he got a bit of hassle, let's call it, off Tommy Walsh and David Clifford as he was coming up to take 45 late on. They were giving him a few digs and pushes into the chest, and the same crap that they're all doing. Pushing into the chest is doing my head in when watching these matches. I can only think of the poor man being pushed in the chest, and your legs are sore and tired, and you're trying to get up with the play, and some dickhead is pushing you in the chest to push you back and not let you catch up with the play. I don't know how I could handle this. What can you do in that situation? And you get no protection from a linesman or referee. It's just you have to deal with this. So you see players, we've talked about it before, the likes of Ryan McHugh, and he just takes 3 or 4 pushes in the chest, puts his head down and just starts running again. It's like they just understand that this is part of the game because they're all at it. Oh God, thank God I'm not part of the game with that that kind of stuff going on. So Morgan has come up with an idea. Is they love changing all these rules about how about one that helps free takers. A lot of the time I come up and take frees because the players are tired. Oh yeah, I thought this was interesting. He comes up and takes the frees because players are tired. It's not that we don't have a forward that can take the kick. Sometimes they've done about a 200 metres worth of sprints and they're not ready to take a free kick. So he's like saying some of the time he comes up to take kicks, it's only because other lads are wrecked. But he's trying to say if you give them 20 seconds or whatever to recover, it might benefit the game. He wants the clock stopped like rugby for a free kick. Now, I wouldn't be in favour of this. It would be GEA has to move on a little bit faster than that. Will the whole stadium have to shh like rugby for a conversion?
Every pub around the country.
Every pub, yeah. You're not even allowed to even talk in pubs. I've been shushed in pubs. It's a sick kind of carry on. But anyways, it's he thinks stopping the clock, he thinks that would help a player recover in time to actually kick it and be able to compose himself. And he also thinks that kind of time wasting of maybe him coming up to take the free kick and being pushed, it would help that as well. Our players wouldn't do that if the clock was stopped. Yeah. I'm not sure it's a runner.
I think it's too difficult to implement. It would have to only apply to scoreable frees that aren't taken by the guy who's fouled. Because otherwise, like if you're stopping the clock for a guy that's fouled, you know when you pick the ball up, people start shouting, you get into a panic and you just end up, moving it down the pitch.
But maybe you'll have to say to the referee, what are you doing with it? And you have to, your captain tells you you're going to go for it. And then someone comes in with a bucket of sand and we're not having that now. No, stupid idea. Right, so Brogan, O'Gara and O'Carroll weren't in the 26th. That's Bernard Brogan. Weren't in the 26th the last day. So Dublin did a press day the morning after the semi-final. Isn't that right, Conan? You were telling me that.
It was it was the Monday. So their semi-final was Saturday. I think they trained on the Sunday, the players who weren't playing, as far as I know, and then on the Monday morning they had their press day. Right,
okay, so they turned that around pretty quickly. We won't say that Dublin expected to beat Mayo and had this organised. We'll say that they did a lot of work on the Sunday and got this turned around for Monday morning. And so this was the thing. So they didn't make the 26th. So Jim Gavin was talking about this at the press day, and he says all players will be disappointed when they don't get on the match day squad. But make no mistake about it, they're pushing hard for a place on the pitch. In the shadows, they're influencing how this team performs. For the next day, there's still a lot of weeks to run. A lot can change over time, and we'll still be searching for the players who can perform consistently. So it's just a funny thing to me that the 26 now has become the big thing. This wasn't the case, obviously, in my day. The 15 was the big thing. And if you were outside the 15, that's no good. Now players are, just the culture in Dublin and the amount of players they have, that now it's a big thing, even to get on the bench. And that's not even talk about whether you're getting on. This is just with a lottery chance of getting on. Do you know what I mean? Because you've obviously got 11 on the bench. How many can be used? 5 or 6? 6, is it?
Yeah.
6 subs. So there's 5 going to be disappointed. So when you look at the last day, 5 subs came on. Cian O'Sullivan, Owen Merchant, Cormac Costello, Philly McMahon, Dear McConnelly and Paddy Andrews all came on. So they used 5 subs. That's interesting that Dublin didn't really use much of their bench the last time. They used 6 subs came on. They used Connolly and Paddy Andrews. That was in the 70th minute. So the game was over at that stage. So they only really used four subs. Cian O'Sullivan, Owen Merchant. Cian O'Sullivan was 49 minutes. Then the next one was 62. Again, very unusual for Dublin. Although the game was won, we'll say that again. But you could still give lads a run when the game is won too. So the subs that were not used the last day was Paddy Small, Kevin McManaman, Eric Lowndes and Sean Bulger. And obviously Comerford as well, because he's never going to get on unless Cluxton's injured. So that's the thing. So there's 5 of them. So you're making a big huge thing to get into the 26. So if you're struggling to get on to 26, you're definitely one of those 5 that aren't getting the game time. So the whole struggle is just to get on to 26 to tug out and be out in Croke Park. See, I don't see. I just had a phobia about being a sub. I'd rather sit in the stand in my clothes than be on the bench and not have a chance of coming on. I don't see why players are desperate. Obviously, they're desperate to get into 26 because they're trying to convince themselves they won't be one of those 25, I presume, and they'll be one of the ones that come on. Are you following me?
Yeah, like is the range that much so in Dublin? So are they thinking if I'm on the bench, I've got a chance of playing, and Gavin might, like Paddy Small, probably in with a shout of playing, right? And like Rory Carroll wasn't in the squad, but he like surely if he was in, you'd think he would have a shout of coming in. Bernard Brogan.
Yeah, you think if you're into 26, it could be a pick of anybody.
I think so.
But my argument is
argument
is if you didn't make the 26 for the last game and you make it this game.
It's not looking good.
It's not looking good for you getting on the team, though, right?
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. I'm just interested in when you mentioned there, it's not about the 15, it's the 26, the level of interest the fans have now. I mean, like, especially in Mayo this year, the thing was, I didn't really care about the team that was announced by Mayo GA whenever it was announced. It was like whoever got the picture of the programme with the 26, because for a start, Horan did it especially towards the end where he's making 3 or 4 changes to the starting team, and then like Mayo actually had a decent bench this year, so you get an idea of who might be coming in. But I think I'm more agreeable with Conan that like it's not that set in stone that if you are, and like the Dublin are different because Dublin tend to be ahead and dominating games, you know, but like for other teams, whoever you use, you know, during the course of the game might completely depend on who you're playing against and the structure of the game itself.
Yeah, so maybe you're right. Maybe the 26, you get in that 26 and he could call on any one of you at any time. And maybe that's it. Because we look at the 4 that didn't get in. Paddy Small, he got in before. Kevin McManaman gets in regularly. And Eric Lowndes gets in regularly. And they were 3 of the ones that didn't get in. Now, Sean Bulger, you would say it was a bit early for him, but he did very well against Tyrone. So maybe you're right. The 26 is the holy grail because you're thinking, if I'm in that, Jim could call on me, you know, and imagine they're 15 versus 15 training games, you know, just trying to get into that 26.
Exactly, and it relies on a manager like Jim Gavin who's going to genuinely look at every player throughout the season and not just have a set team. He set 15 and he set 5 subs or whatever it is, and another hurling reference for you. But remember in 2012 when Brian Cody just called Walter Walsh out of nowhere, put him in for the final, scored 1-3, but he was talking about that recently, wasn't it? He was talking about that recently, and he was saying about sometimes the answer staring you in the face.
Who were they playing?
Galway.
I'll catch you out on something from that game.
I wasn't sure if it was a replay or not, to be honest. But and he was saying sometimes the answer staring you in the face because he was looking at it in training thinking this boy's going well. So someone like Cody, someone like Jim Gavin is genuinely watching how they're getting on every week. If you're going well and you're in the 26, then you might get picked. Yeah,
exactly. I think that's it. So I was going to start wondering why the hell they're all so desperate to get in 26 when it's the first 21. It's the first 21 is really the holy grail, not the first 26, but they don't know exactly who's on. Okay, we figured it out, guys. Thanks for your help on that one. Right, we'll come back after the break. So we have to talk about Mayo, Connor. We're not going to let you off the hook on that. So, we were talking on Monday about the Keegan on Con was a wrong mistake, was a mistake, was a wrong call. The maybe Boyle on Kilkenny, a couple of those things, pretty much coming in with a running game against Dublin with no, alternative or no kind of variety, probably is a mistake as well. What's the talk in Mayo?
Yeah, I listened to the show on Monday. I definitely wouldn't listen to it if it was out on Sunday. I wasn't ready for it at that stage. It was still probably a bit delicate by Monday afternoon. But I think there was an acknowledgement that while that 12 to 15 minute period after half time was just out of this world and exceptional by the Dubs, that Mayo weren't blameless in what we did, probably both in the first half and in the second half. So I think you're right that we needed more variety kind of up front. Because Mayo never even looked like creating a goal chance in the first half, and you're always going to need goals to
when
beat
you're
Dublin.
On top, yeah.
And the matchups, I didn't like it when I saw Lee Keegan going in on Conor Callahan, because Con was always likely to play close to goal, and for as good as this has been said loads of times since, but for as good a man marker as Lee Keegan has been for people who directly influence the game out the field, he's not cornerback is a specialist thing. Yeah. Lee Keegan is not a specialist cornerback, and the issue I couldn't get over how easy the second goal for Con was. It was a free kick, it was a set piece, and the two of them were there pretty much edge of the square on their own. And Lee Keegan got no protection. I'd have maybe issue with the way he tried to defend it, but at the start you never, like, you wouldn't do that at club level, never mind inter-county level, to leave that space in front of somebody as deadly as Con, who's obviously on fire, who's just scored a goal off Lee Keegan.
Now, in fairness, I have a feeling now, obviously, because you don't get that level of analysis maybe on the Sunday game. I have a feeling from if you saw that behind the goals, maybe Dublin made that, made space for him there, and
it
got
looked
Mannion.
very easy at the time.
There was 3 covering Mayo defenders on the other side.
Yeah.
So were they covering Mannion, or did Mannion make a sacrificial run and too many of them went with him? I don't know, because we didn't see the footage of it.
Of course, I even just looking at it, like I was high in the Hogan Standard, even just looking at it afterwards, thinking that was so easy.
Yeah.
But part of me at the time thought the Mayo's heads are so scrambled at that stage, having been blitzed, the 10 minutes before, that it's just sometimes mistakes like that you just can't account for them. But apart from that, I still would have had, like, hindsight is a great thing, but I would have had Keegan on Kilkenny as usual. Probably, I think you mentioned before, maybe Boyle on Scully, that might allow him to be able to drop off a bit more. I think Paddy Durkin on Jack McCaffrey worked. He was unfortunate with the 2 shots just after half time. Whether they would have made a big difference, I don't know. But it was just, I knew Dublin would come with a blitz, but I didn't expect them to score 2-6 in the space of 12 minutes and just completely flatten us. Yeah. And then it was a procession after that. It was really annoying too, because Dublin's tails were up. They were really, like, even if you saw them off the ball, some of the Dublin lads were sickening to the Mayo lads altogether. It was I know they beat a lot of teams by 10 to 12 points, but I'd say they got immense satisfaction out of that. Brian Fenton celebrated a goal like I've never seen him celebrate before, and the game was done and dusted at that stage. So for a county that has given Dublin some unbelievable battles over the years, to see them being put to the sword so comprehensively was tough to take. Yeah.
Probably hard for you to watch as a Mayo man, but I think it was very obviously enjoyable for Dublin to finally put them away, and give them a beating. And maybe that's, I think maybe Dublin needed to do that. And you're right with the kind of celebrations for the goal from Fenton, which that goal meant nothing. I think they were finally glad to give them a bit of a scutcheon, because there is no love lost on the field between the two teams, and they're both at it.
They went to Coppers afterwards, apparently, the two of them. Coppers had a tweet saying they welcomed players from both counties. They were in the same room together, and not a bad word was said.
Jeez, a Royal Rumble. No, after they listen, sure, all this stuff goes on the field, and they're trying to wind each other up, and they're trying to get each other sent off, and all these things go on. But most players, now there are some babies, but most players just forget about that after the game.
And the funny, Dublin's bogey team is a team that they only beat by a point every time. They still beat them all the time. But they probably I don't know if you can call it an Indian sign, but just getting rid of that and burying them, like they do everybody else.
James Horan wasn't using it as an excuse. He said, if you think about the journey we've been on this year and apply any common sense to it, the turnaround they're asking amateur players to do is crazy. I didn't really mention it all year. I'm not at all in any way using it as an excuse, but coming back from games at 2 a.m. in the morning and guys being in work on a Monday, and just the whole what we're asking players to do is very, very tough. I completely take his point. Mayo being tired had nothing to do with the 12 minutes after half time. They were after playing well in the first half. They were well rested for 15 minutes. That's not where, if Dublin had done that in the last 15 minutes, you might say, Jesus, they were out on their feet, whatever. That was just Mayo's brain scrambled, they couldn't get it, and Dublin just completely dominated them, and with the quality they have, they just put them away completely. But I do take James Horan's point, and to be honest, you'll be glad to see the end of the Super 8s, because it was badly thought out. Coming through the qualifiers, having to play 7 games in 6 weeks, coming straight into Super 8s off the qualifiers, never gave those teams much of a chance. You might give them a chance in the first game or two, but by All-Ireland semi-final time, the week after the last Super 8 game, you're gone. You've no chance really. So even though Tyrone did it last year, am I right in saying that? Tyrone got through the whole qualifiers, they did.
Yeah, and they actually played a good team against Dublin in Omagh last year, as opposed to this year when they were able to rest a lot of people. I think they played close to full strength.
Because that was the second game.
The second game.
They have a third game where they were able to rest a lot of players. I can't remember right now, but I was just looking at it, even you're dead right, I would never use it as an excuse for what happened to Mayo against Dublin. But in terms of it doesn't make it wrong. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't question the system that allows Mayo to play that amount of games, our teams to play that amount of games. I was just looking at it, Mayo had to go to Newry, Limerick, Killarney, Dublin a couple of times. A lot of these would have been overnights on the Friday or the Saturday, and then, like James Horan's mentioned, getting back at 2 a.m. So they would have done the night before that as well, and that affects how you're able to train during the week, recovery, having to fit that all in. So
Yeah.
he was never going to use it as an excuse before the game because it couldn't be seen to be using that as an excuse anyway. But I think he's right to bring it up afterwards, that it's not feasible in the long run.
No, so I think any restructure now with a tier 1 and a tier 2 should have, you'll be playing your championship game. Well, obviously I'll talk my own one. If it was based on the National League, you'd have 7 championship games leading into All-Ireland semi-finals, and you'd have a 2-week break between every game, and on that alternate weekend the Division 2 matches will be on, so they have their own weekend, in the sun, rather than be the B-side of the weekend. They'd just be maybe on with hurling matches or something like that, but sure, the football people would still, there's loads of football people that don't watch hurling, so they'd still have a huge interest in the tier 2, and I think that's the way to probably do the tier 2. But we know the Super 8s are done next year. They won't be back, that's it. There's too many faults with them. And we obviously know that committee has been set up this year with a complete blank canvas, and they're going to come up with recommendations to bring to Congress next year with a view of bringing maybe some restructure. This is exciting stuff, lads, that we could have a restructure that has been okayed by the higher level, third level colleges representation, the CPA, the GPA and the CCCC, so the GEA. Imagine that. Well, there's no one can complain about it then, because that's what I'm always complaining about. Well, then it's just an ego thing. Well, I think my one's better. No, if all of those people agree and they come out of the room happy, should we finally have a structure that we can all be happy with, which is brilliant, and then you won't have this kind of complaining.
I would just love to see some sort of seeded format, so you make sure you have your best 16 teams or whatever, and then your best 8, and progressively it's getting more and more competitive. And the Super 8s, I know we have that, but people like Mayo, we're playing Armagh on the way there, and there's big teams putting each other out, so it would be great to have everybody on an even keel, and then it's progressively getting harder as you go along. Yeah,
okay. Well, now you're trying to get in your restructure in there, Conan, so we'll have to move on
just
from that.
After yours there.
Get the last word on this. So now James Horan's talking about the next year. I was saying on Monday, Conor, that I think Mayo absolutely aren't gone. They're still a huge team, but their chances of beating Dublin are gone, so they might have to hope Kerry beat them in a semi, and then you would give Mayo a chance against Kerry in a final. But he says there's no questions there would be changes in that Mayo group for next year. I think that's clear, but that will take its own course. We have a huge amount of players, young players that were involved this year, and new players that are involved this year, and new players. I'm not sure what he means there. If we use that result right, there is a real learning to see where the top standard is. We have to use it that way, otherwise it's a hopeless cause. Now, is he being overly optimistic about all these young players in Mayo, or what's he saying?
Well, let's say at the start of the year, if you were if I'd been told that Fionn McDonagh, Matty Rowan and James Carr would be regular starters in the Mayo Championship team by the end of 2019, I probably wouldn't have believed you. There'd been mention of all of them. Matty Rowan was on the team that won the Under-20 All-Ireland. Fionn McDonagh has been kind of on the fringes for a couple of years. James Carr came out of nowhere than anybody else. But I wouldn't have thought that they would be on the Mayo starting team by the end of 2019.
They're on it, but have they made it stronger?
Probably not. If I'm being completely
if you're
honest,
you can bring in a couple more young players next year, but are they bringing Mayo back down into the group of the Galways and the Donegals, rather than the top 4?
Well, that's the thing. When we talk about retirements, I think Andy and David Clark will obviously they're 35, 36. They'll obviously be questioned. I think Keith Higgins will be. Will maybe question it because he's been on the go for so long. He was a young footballer back in the year in 2006. So he's been on the road a long time. So my fear is that the players that are stepping down, or the players that have maybe reached their peak, are generational players. You're talking footballers of the year, multiple All-Stars, 4 and 5 time winners. So that's the standard that you have to reach to get up to it. Only time will tell if the next crop have that ability.
Well, I'll tell you now, they don't.
Well, okay. Well, maybe the crop that have come on next year, maybe Fionn McDonagh and Matty Rowan aren't going to be 3 and 4 time All-Stars, but say you mightn't have said when James Horan started in 2011 that Lee Keegan is going to be a 4-time All-Star and Player of the Year. James Horan has a brilliant track record of developing young players. Yeah. Whether they're there in Mayo at the moment, I'm not 100% sure. He did give some exposure to Oisin Mullen and Tommy Conroy, who came up from the under-20s. They were both on 26s in the Super 8s, actually, not just in the league or anything like that. So that's the standard they have to reach. Whether they can do it, I'd have my worries, but only time will tell. James Horan is the right man to bring them on. Anyway.
I'm not sure. I think Fionn McDonagh is limited enough. I think James Carr has potential if you use him better than making him run out to the wings. I think I was surprised that his
Still raw, I think.
He's a little bit raw, but he's so good at winning ball and turning, and he can score.
Yeah.
So why not play him in a bit closer to
Yeah,
goal?
true,
I mean, that when he runs out to the wing, and then there's a man up behind him, he becomes a one-trick pony. Oh, he's going to take him on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's that might work once, but it's too easy to defend against. Kevin McManam's probably the only one who's done that so consistently. But Kevin McManam has never become a starter because he's too predictable. You know what I mean? If that's who you're trying to emulate, I'm not sure that's the right person to emulate. You need more variety to your game. And in fairness, McManaman, he's tried to do that. He's not the same one-trick pony, but he's still very predictable.
I think McDonough and Carr's weaknesses though are coachable. I think McDonough has made a couple of stupid mistakes, maybe just off the back of it being his first proper year in the starting team. Getting blocked down too many times and maybe running into contact too many times, not moving the ball on when he should, taking shots that aren't. I think that's all coachable, and Carr obviously is as well. It's just positioning sense and getting more used to full forward if that's where they're going to play him. So that's good. You have some raw tools there that you can use, but. Yeah, it probably still comes back to the idea: are they going to replace some of the best players that Ireland has had over the last?
When you actually think about the Lee Keegan decision to play him corner forward, so now you're not only losing Andy Moran, who's not starting. These are players of the year. You're playing your other player of the year in a position that he's no good in. Okay, he's all right in, but he's not at the top level cornerback. When Mayo were beating Dublin, or almost beating Dublin in 16-17, Keegan was scoring goals from wing back. He was scoring really important goals. Imagine Jim Gavin looking onto that field and seeing Lee Keegan going down cornerback. I'd say he couldn't believe it. I'd say he was like, what man has done us more damage than any other player? And there's none.
Yeah.
None outside Lee Keegan. He's blotted Conley out of the game. He scored big clutch goals. And if Mayo lost those finals, it wasn't Lee Keegan's fault. Lee Keegan stood up and was counted. And now Jim Gavin's looking out at Lee Keegan in a fish out of water marking Con.
Yeah.
When you think about it, and then Keegan gets out to the half-back line, goes up, scores a goal.
That was depressing.
There's not many players going to score goals against Dublin in 3 consecutive championship games, and those 3 consecutive championship games are 2 finals and a semi-final.
Scoring on Cluxton like that, Cluxton's not easy to score goals on.
Yeah, and Dublin obviously would have had a big plan for Keegan, definitely would have. And then when they all saw him a cornerback, they're thinking, happy bloody days.
Days.
Plans aborted, lads, we don't need it.
Yeah, so the Mayo team that started on this is the last one on Mayo in case people want to tune out. The Mayo team that started on Saturday night, I think Malachy Clerkin had this one, I thought it was interesting, was younger than the Dublin team. So the Mayo team that started on Saturday night was younger than the Dublin team, only marginally. On average, an average age of 27.2 as opposed to 27.3, but nonetheless a younger team. And despite bringing on Keith Higgins, Andy Moran and Kevin McLaughlin over the course of the game, they were younger than Dublin at the end too, an average of 27.9 against 28.3. Is that interesting? That you would always have thought that Dublin team was a lot younger than the Mayo team. It's just the perception that's out there because Mayo have been on the road so long. So Horan has brought the average age down. He definitely has. And we know Jim Gavin is constantly trying to bring the average age down, and you have to be cutthroat. I was looking at some Brian Cody stuff for the live show tomorrow night, and he was cutthroat with Henry Shefflin, Charlie Carter, Tommy Walsh, legends of the game. You can't hang on. If these managers had Andy Moran to be sorry, you're done. I'm sorry, we have to move on from you. Do you know that's the reality? That's what these cutthroat managers are doing. Look what Jim's doing to Alan Brogan, Bernard Brogan. Sorry. We have to move on from you. That's the reality.
Kenny and Dublin are lucky in that they have the conveyor belts that are better than other counties.
That's true.
And Andy, for example, has obviously shown his worth at various different times this year. I don't know.
When can Carr stand up?
I know.
If Moran is your go-to man still.
Yeah.
He can't blossom. He's still the talisman with the crowd. When is Carr going to be that person? Now I know it's only his first year, but you get me. The psychology of why they do this is the knock-on effect that someone else has to now be the man and not dependent anymore on again.
But is he just still not better regardless of age? It's you still pick your best players, right, for the squad. And the reason Bernard Brogan lost his place was because Conor Callaghan, whatever age he was better than him. So he gets to come in. And if Carr was better than Andy Moran,
I'd argue that Kieran Kilkenny took Alan Brogan's place, and I don't think Kieran Kilkenny was better than Alan Brogan at the time he took it over. You could obviously now you might look back, but I think Jim Gavin went, what's my 5-year plan? Alan Brogan's not centre forward on it. Kieran Kenny is. Alan, You're my
Yeah,
sub.
that's
This, you know what I mean?
interesting,
I do
yeah.
think that player managers are thinking down that road as well. But
I can accept that, Willie.
okay, great. No argument over that. Paul Flynn, lads, has been talking. This is something I've banged the drum on since I joined media. There's been a few different pet hates of mine. Championship restructures has been a huge one. We could be at the end of that road next year. Dublin playing in Croke Park was another big one. They ended up coming out of Leinster. Everything I complained about is about 5 years later when someone higher profile than me complains about it. So now Paul Flynn, I've talked about this for a long time, is like the GPAs, it's like players looking for a percentage of gate receipts. So we know the GAA are making huge amount of money. Like, I mean, for the All-Ireland hurling final, the price of an All-Ireland hurling ticket has gone up to €90. So Paul Cody, the Carlow hurler, was working out that 70,000 by 90 and maybe the 12,000 on the hill by 45 works out at 7 million for one game. Now, we know that that's complete, not a fair representation of all the other games. You know, like Kerry, Tyrone isn't getting anywhere near that.
Yeah, it's like corporate boxes as well. There's probably even more than that.
Probably more than that, yeah, when it comes to the corporate boxes. Yeah, you're dead right. So, like, I mean, I think that players, not just for big games in Croke Park, for every game, because when you look at it, what 70 million is there without the players? So if they down tools, if management team down tools, the players could still play. If stewards aren't there, we'll get other stewards. If the very elite top level players don't want to play, who do you get? Club players? Are 82,000 people going to go watch club players? Because the Club All-Ireland finals don't get anywhere near that. These are the very elite players. And the sooner they get something back for filling out stadiums. Now, we're not looking at full-time professionalism. We're not looking at the game going to a situation where there's transfers. You know, all these doomsday scenarios. This is just a very simple thing, that the players get 15 or 20% of any show they put on. They're basically putting on a show. Like a band doesn't do a show in Slane and go, look, everybody else can get paid. We'll just do that for free. We'll bring 100,000 there, but look, we're grand.
Yeah.
We're not. That's not how it works. These are star attractions. Any game, league or championship, the players get a 20% cut. Paul Flynn is saying 15% of a cut of any takings on the gate. Only the gate.
Are we opening ourselves up to accusations of elitism again, that, you know, well, Dublin are always going to generate, you know, 50,
No,
60%?
it's played pro rata like the government grants.
That's what I was going to say.
So it's
Okay,
pooled in.
yeah.
It's pooled in, and it's paid out based on how far you get in the championship. I think that's probably the fair, because no one complains about how the grants are paid. So I remember when we got the government grants, I think I got 1,200 one year. They were in a while. I think I got maybe 800 another year. It depends how far you get in the championship. The All-Ireland winners maybe get $2,500. And realistically, when you're looking at, I was looking at this before, 20% of the total gate receipts for a full year only works out at maybe 5 million, the same as the grants. So you're not going to get rich out of it. The All-Ireland champions will get $2,500, you know, across the panel. And rightly so. Like, I mean, it's not even that much money. It's not even that much money, but it's a thank you, and it's players realising their worth at this stage. Look at the Sky deal. Look at the money that's flush in the GEA, and immediately to shoot this down, which this is nowhere near professionalism. But this is a thank you, I would say, for basically entertaining the country during the summer and giving so much joy to so many people and making so much bloody money for the GEA. Yeah. It's just more a thank you than anything to do with professionalism.
Do you know what a knock-on effect of this could be? Is counties actually trying to promote the games even more? So, like, you know, if you've got a big match coming up, rather than having an embargo and nobody's allowed to talk, you're actually drumming up the publicity, because you're thinking, if we can get more interest in this game, more people will come, and at the end of the year we're all getting more money.
Well, it's managers that put a stop to that, not players.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
As the players are like, you know, can we try and get more than 33,000 at the semi-final? We're playing Kerry. Like, you know, I can just do a video down here. Like, you know,
I don't think they'd get distracted with that. I see your point. I see. I couldn't see them getting distracted by that coming up to a big game. I really don't.
What if we crunched the numbers for them and told them, like, you know, you would get $3,000 extra at the end of the year?
I don't think this. I think a player would go. I don't think if a player was to say, "I'll give you $3,000, but you might lose that game," versus nothing and win it. I don't think that. I think they'll just try to. I don't think they go down that road. I know what you're saying.
It's funny enough. Talking about media exposure in the week before a game, and on this topic as well. I found it really surprising that Chris Barrett did an interview there last week with the Irish Times, and it was published on the Friday, and it was done after the Donegal game, because he was talking about the Dublin game. but he was calling for tax breaks for GAA players or some form of reward based on, I think it was the rugby players that used to get it, that like for the 10 years of their biggest earnings or something like that, that they'd be rewarded at the end of their career. So it's just like on the same topic, and it's literally, it's a reward for the amount of effort that they're putting in, and it's them generating the money, so why not them get some
but see,
reward
that's
at
from
the
the
end of it?
government. See, I have a thing about it. I think the GEA should give them a handshake and say, thank you. Look what you're doing for us. Look, you made us 70 million in one game and you've asked for nothing in return, outside of winning. But at the same time, why not just say, here you go, thank you. We're making all of this money and we're going to give you a tiny little bit, thank you.
I've got it. What if a stipulation of the GA giving them a cut of this money was you cannot have an embargo, so you have to play ball with the media?
Oh yeah, well I think that should go without. I think but you see, the GPA don't want players doing media. Like they're actually training players not to say anything to media. I genuinely think the majority of players probably don't want to talk to the media. Some do. My argument is the ones that do shouldn't be prevented from it. But in general, I do think players don't want. The amount of texts I get back just keeping the head down, Wooly, which is grand. But a lot of players just want to keep the head
Chris
down.
Barrett did media and look how it worked out for him. Mayo lost.
Yes, yeah. Well, the big one was Joe Canning doing the huge interview with Vincent Hogan the morning of the Tipperary game that he got the winning point in. That should have put that to bed. But it's never used. The interview is never used as a reason you play well, but it's used if you don't play well. It's used as a reason the other way around. So Paul Flynn, GPA's current funding arrangement with the GAA, it gets 15% of the GAA commercial revenue, and that was another big thing that was spoken about because the GPA didn't have their funding from the GAA linked to commercial revenue, so it was 100% based on handouts from the GAA rather than, that's guaranteed. The GAA can't touch that. That's 15% of what our members are generating, right? So the next step maybe is the gate receipts. So Paul Flynn said 80% of revenue generated by the GEA comes from inter-county games, which is fantastic because we're able to invest a lot back into the clubs and grassroots and coaching. That's the beauty of the GEA. But equally, the players can't pay for play. They have to be supported in cost reimbursement. So he's calling it cost reimbursement, and I think that's fair, cost reimbursement rather than pay for play. It's not really pay for play. It's thank you for the effort. It's, it's not a professional as such. People think all inter-county players are in receipts of expenses and in nutrition allowance. By the book they are, but they're not getting paid the right expenses at all times or in a timely fashion. The investment players are paying to fill stadiums to generate revenue for the GAA. You ask that they are supported. So this will be the next thing the GPA are going for. The argument against this will be, if you take 5 million out of that pot and give it to players, there's 5 million that can't be given down to clubs. Which is obviously going to pull on the heartstrings of a lot of people around the country. My argument is that, listen, you've got 80%, share that the way you want. You know what I mean? A little bit less to all those people and give it to players. I think let's not worry about, because if that's like saying you can't talk about that because there's homeless children living on the streets. Well, if you compare it to that, then nothing will ever get done. There won't be a road ever built in the whole country if you compare. Is that a stupid analogy there?
I think I had a bad one on Monday, and this is bad.
All right, I'm moving on. So are we all being voted that this is a good thing, or are you as two staunch club players?
Worried me now, yeah. I got excited when you were saying the club players would take over from the county players when they would no longer play. They go on strike. I thought me and Connor are in here now.
I saw your little eyes light up there. All right.
But I think they're generating a lot of money. There should be just some sort of pooled, automated thing then when you're
definitely in favour.
Yeah, I think so too. Right, it's the last one here, lads, and I was wondering whether to even talk about this, but there's too many people talking about it this week, and this is the Tyrone and the bottle of water rumours with the whatever the sick whatever they had in it. So I don't believe this. I believe that I think Stephen O'Neill has more integrity than to run in onto a pitch with 2 bottles of water and being a player of the year, hand a bottle of water today, or try to hand a bottle of water to David Clifford, a future player of the year. I just can't accept that would ever happen, and I don't believe it happened. The talk is that Foley got sick at half time. Why did he come out in the second half? The talk, Stephen O'Brien drank it and felt his stomach rumbling. He scored 1-2 in the second half. So he should be contacting Tyrone, asking him for some for the final. Like, I mean, I just think it's nonsense and it's surprising. Look, maybe I'm naive because I was on when all this talk was going on about, oh, well, there's a drugs problem. This Kimmage who thinks there's a drug problem in every sport because of what he's come from, the time the Kerry player took something inadvertently and it was a contaminated product. I don't think performance enhancing drugs are an issue. Maybe I'm being naive with that. Maybe I'm being too naive to say that Tyrone could potentially do this and target a couple of players. I don't want to believe it's true. I don't believe it's true. And that's all I have to say on that. What do you think?
Jeez, I don't think it's true either. And as you say, the two samples aren't really consistent. Like, well, Jason Foley played another 15 minutes and still did well on McShane.
Yeah,
came off tactically because they brought on
exactly.
Tommy Walsh.
That's what it was. That was a tactical substitution because he was battling hard on McShane, and we spoke on Monday. You keep McShane to 3 from play, which Foley did while he was on it. You're not doing that bad.
Yeah, and then as you say, Stephen O'Brien was man of the match. Like, he was brilliant. So
the funny thing I found about it was, and obviously it had to be enhanced for the purposes of storytelling when sent around WhatsApp, but how blatant Ronan McNamee was meant to be with David Clifford when he kept how often has any opposition player ever asked you repeatedly, do you want to drink water? Do you know?
And one thing Tyrone are, they're not stupid with stuff like that. So if you're going to do this, Stephen O'Neill's giving Ronan McNamee the water and he just casually gives the other one. He doesn't even look at Clifford, and Clifford goes, oh, thank you, Stephen, you were a great player.
Then he starts sniggering the back.
The whole game.
So Ronan McNamee goes, go on, take a drink of that.
Why did you have a drink of water?
What's wrong with that water? In a different bottle. So then there was pictures of Stephen O'Neill going around with, in fairness, there were 2 different bottles.
Yeah, with
so it's
Stephen
like,
O'Brien as well.
With Stephen. Anyways, I don't. But funnily enough, a fella was saying yesterday on Twitter, I haven't read Brian Corcoran's book, but he said on Twitter that in Brian Corcoran's book, he said that Cork players never ever drank out of opposition teams' water bottles. Again, how naive I've been all my life. I'll guzzle water off anyone that gives it to me. Like, I mean, I'll shout for water off opposition water, but come on, give us a drop of that. They'll always give it to you. Like, I mean, but at the same time, is this naivety, lads? Like, I mean,
I don't believe it, the Tyrone thing, but it has scared me to think, Jesus, people might be getting bad ideas from this now.
Oh, yeah. But, like, I mean, that is just the worst form of cheating. That's disgusting cheating. That's taking out players. Whatever. I think taking performance-enhancing drugs, you're not doing anything to the other team. You're making a choice to cheat yourself. This is cheating in the worst possible way, in that you're destroying somebody else's chance of. Oh, stop! I don't even want to take. It's not true. Well, I can't say it's not true categorically, but I would vouch for Stephen O'Neill. That's basically the way I'd go about it.
Yeah,
agreed.
One former player of the year to a potential former of the year. Do you like that? That really make you think there's no way. One lefty that developed the right with another lefty that developed the right, passing the torch. For Stephen O'Neill to do that, maybe he's jealous of Clifford. Maybe he's like, this. Who does this lad think he is? Right, we'll leave it here before we stop talking absolute nonsense altogether. Right, that's it. We'll be back next Thursday. We'll make up a show for you next Thursday, because the Thursday after it then is the preview to the All-Ireland final. So we'll talk to you then. Good luck.